Have you ever witnessed the power of silence? Not just any silence, but that bone-chilling quiet that comes when a strong, independent woman, a Sigma female, decides she's done. You know that moment when the usual warmth in her voice disappears, replaced by something distant and final? Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most misunderstood phenomena in relationship dynamics: what happens when a Sigma female goes silent, and why by the time you notice, it's already too late. The anatomy of Sigma female silence. Let's paint a picture of what we're really talking about here. A Sigma female silence isn't your typical cold shoulder or passive-aggressive response to a bad day. No, this is something far more profound and calculated. Imagine a chess grandmaster who's seen 12 moves ahead and already knows the game is over, while their opponent is still plotting their next move. That's what we're dealing with here. The silence of a Sigma female is layered with meaning, carefully constructed through experiences, observations, and deep internal processing. It's not a hasty reaction, but rather a well-thought-out response to a situation that has reached its breaking point. Think of it as the final page of a book that's been writing itself for months, maybe even years. Each paragraph leading up to this moment has been filled with attempts at communication, subtle warnings, and clear boundaries that somehow went unnoticed or unheeded. The path leading to silence. Before we dive deeper into the implications of this silence, it's crucial to understand the journey that leads here. A Sigma female typically goes through several stages before reaching this point of no return. Initially, she's direct and communicative, addressing issues head-on with remarkable clarity. She'll express her concerns, set boundaries, and work towards solutions with an almost mechanical efficiency. This isn't someone who plays games or drops subtle hints. She's upfront about what works for her and what doesn't. However, when her clear communication meets with repeated dismissal, when her boundaries are consistently violated, and when her attempts at resolution are met with empty promises or temporary changes, something shifts. The shift is subtle at first, almost imperceptible to those not paying close attention. Her once detailed explanations become shorter, more concise. The passion in her voice when discussing future plans begins to fade. She stops sharing her deeper thoughts and feelings, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. The psychology behind the silence. Understanding the psychological mechanics at play here is fascinating. A Sigma female's mind works like a sophisticated operating system, constantly processing information, analyzing patterns, and making calculated decisions. When she chooses silence, it's not an emotional outburst, but rather the result of a thorough cost-benefit analysis of the situation. Think about it, these are women who value efficiency and authenticity above all else. They don't waste energy on drama or unnecessary confrontations. When they encounter a problem, their first instinct is to solve it systematically. They'll attempt direct communication, suggest solutions, and give multiple chances for improvement. But here's the crucial part: they're also keeping score, not out of pettiness, but as part of their analytical nature. Every broken promise, every dismissed concern, every violated boundary gets logged in their mental database. They're not just collecting grievances, they're gathering data points that eventually form a clear pattern. And once that pattern becomes undeniable, their response is not to fight against it, but to accept it as valuable information about the relationship's viability. The breaking point when enough becomes enough. The moment a Sigma female transitions into silence isn't marked by dramatic declarations or emotional ultimatums. Instead, it's characterized by a quiet, almost peaceful acceptance of reality. This is perhaps the most unsettling part for those on the receiving end. There's no big fight, no heated argument, no opportunity for last-minute promises or grand gestures. The breaking point often comes after a series of seemingly minor incidents that, when viewed collectively, paint a picture of fundamental incompatibility or disrespect. It might be as simple as one more broken promise, one more dismissed boundary, or one more instance of having to repeat herself about something she's already clearly communicated multiple times. What makes this moment particularly significant is that it's not driven by anger or hurt, though those emotions might be present. Instead, it's driven by a clear-eyed recognition that the situation no longer serves her growth, peace, or purpose. It's a calculated decision based on accumulated evidence rather than a reactive emotional response. The silent implementation phase. Once a Sigma female reaches this point, she enters what we might call the silent implementation phase. This is where things get really interesting and, for those on the receiving end, potentially devastating. During this phase, she's not just giving you the silent treatment, she's actively reorganizing her life in preparation for a complete disconnect. This phase is characterized by intense focus and efficiency. While maintaining basic civility, she's systematically untangling her life from whatever or whoever has prompted this response. She's updating her plans, redistributing her emotional and physical resources, and strengthening her independent support systems. All of this happens with minimal external drama or fanfare. What makes this phase particularly significant is its thoroughness. A Sigma female doesn't do things halfway when she decides to implement change. She considers every angle. She's thinking about practical considerations, emotional implications, and long-term consequences. She's already mapped out her next several moves and has probably started implementing them before anyone else notices something's different. The point of no return. Here's where we need to talk about why it's usually too late by the time you notice a Sigma female has gone silent. The simple truth is that her silence isn't the beginning of the end, it's the end of the end. By the time she's gone quiet, she's already processed through all possible scenarios and their outcomes. This isn't just surface-level thinking, we're talking about deep, analytical processing that considers multiple angles and future implications. She's likely spent countless hours examining the situation from every possible perspective, looking for solutions or alternatives, before concluding that silence is her best option. Emotionally detached from the situation. This is crucial to understand. Her silence isn't an attempt to elicit a response or prompt change. It's a sign that she's already completed her emotional processing and has reached a state of acceptance about the situation's conclusion, prepared for all practical implications of her decision. Whether this means financial adjustments, living arrangements, social circle changes, or professional modifications, she's already got it figured out. She's not acting on impulse, she's executing a well-thought-out plan. Why traditional responses don't work. This is where many people make critical mistakes in their response to a Sigma female's silence. Common reactions like grand gestures, repeated attempts at communication, or trying to force a confrontation not only fail to work but often serve to reinforce her decision. Here's why. These responses often demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of what her silence means. It's not a negotiation tactic or a cry for attention, it's a final conclusion reached after thorough analysis and multiple attempts at resolution. Moreover, such reactions typically focus on immediate emotional reconciliation without addressing the underlying issues that led to her silence. For a Sigma female, this kind of surface-level response only confirms that her decision was correct, the rare path to recovery. While it's true that a Sigma female's silence usually marks the point of no return, there are rare exceptions. However, these exceptions require a perfect storm of genuine change and understanding. The path to potentially rebuilding a connection requires complete acknowledgement of the patterns and behaviors that led to this point. This means not just recognizing individual incidents but understanding the systemic issues that created the problem. Demonstrable, consistent change that doesn't require her monitoring or management. The change must be self-driven and sustainable, not just a temporary adjustment meant to win her back. A fundamental shift in how her boundaries and communication are respected. This isn't about making promises, it's about showing a deep understanding of why previous patterns were problematic and implementing lasting changes. Aftermath and growth. What happens after a Sigma female goes silent is perhaps the most telling part of this whole phenomenon. Rather than experiencing regret or second-guessing her decision, she typically enters a period of accelerated growth and renewed energy. This period is characterized by a surge in personal and professional achievements. Freed from the emotional drain of a situation that wasn't serving her, she often channels her energy into her goals and ambitions with remarkable results. Stronger, clearer boundaries in all areas of her life. The experience usually leads to an even more refined understanding of her own limits and needs, which she implements across all relationships and situations. Enhanced emotional intelligence and self-awareness. While she was already self-aware, the experience of reaching and enforcing her limits often leads to even deeper understanding of her own patterns and needs. Looking forward, the evolution of silence. Understanding a Sigma female's silence is about more than just recognizing when it's too late to salvage a situation. It's about appreciating the complex interplay of analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, and self-respect that characterizes these independent women. Their silence isn't just an absence of noise, it's the presence of a decision, the manifestation of self-respect, and the beginning of a new chapter. It's the sound of someone choosing their peace over chaos, their growth over stagnation, and their self-worth over compromise. Conclusion, the echo of silence. In closing, when a Sigma female goes silent, it's not just an ending, it's a transformation. That silence marks the moment she chooses herself, her peace, and her future over temporary comfort or familiar chaos. It's the culmination of a journey that likely began long before anyone else noticed, and its finality is both its power and its purpose. Remember, her silence isn't meant to be understood as a weapon or a warning. It's simply the final period at the end of a long sentence that's been writing itself for longer than anyone realized. By the time you notice the quiet, she's already moved on to writing her next chapter, and that chapter doesn't include space for the things that led to her silence in the first place. The real tragedy isn't in the silence itself, but in the fact that it took silence for others to finally pay attention to what she'd been saying all along. So the next time you encounter a Sigma female's silence, understand that it's not the beginning of something, it's the end of everything that led to it, and the birth of something new, something stronger, and something entirely her own. In the end, her silence speaks volumes about her strength, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to her own growth and peace. And by the time you hear it, she's already gone.